Hey everyone, what's up? I'm your host Nick, and today we are in the home stretch, as in the final part of the Conflict of Nations Unit Basics series. Now, we have gotten so much support and gone through so many units in this series. It's insane and so heartwarming to know that you all have stuck with me and enjoyed the series so much. I try to put as much effort as I can into this series while I have a lot of my life stuff going on, and with all the new players coming into the game, I feel that this needs to be finished, and also there needs to be more basics series in the future that may just be general basics. It might also, be country basics, etc., etc. So today I'm using my Saudi Arabia game as reference with my friend here Iran, Dr. Silent Death, and we're doing pretty well. So today we're going to be going over the most unique tab in the game, and it's probably going to be the longest, and this may end up being two parts. It may be one. You're seeing this in the video anyway, but that's depends on how long it takes to explain all this stuff, because there is a lot of different unique features that all of these units have. So we're going to get right into the action today. So the first officer we're going to be talking about is going to be the infantry officer. Now, before we start, I do want to mention something, because I might get it lost in all of the different things I'm going to be talking about today. There are some doctrine buffs and debuffs in here, but they're only for research levels. Basically what that means is that some units can be researched earlier, or can be only researched later than other doctrines in certain officer tabs. So let me go over that really quickly. So for the infantry officer, which is this one we're talking about right here, the top one, the Western doctrine is going to have a worse research time as opposed to the Eastern doctrine, which is going to get actually some quicker research levels than the even EU. Granted, the EU doctrine actually gets no buffs or debuffs for these research levels. It's just Western and Eastern. The Airborne officer is best, this one right here, is best in the Western tab. It gets faster research levels, while the Eastern isn't terrible, but it gets a worse early research level. The tank commander, which is this guy right here, the third down, is going to have better research levels in the Western doctrine and the Eastern doctrine. The rotary wing officer, which is this guy right here, the fourth down, is going to have better research levels early on for the Western doctrine, but worse research levels in the later research levels for the Western doctrine. Both of the doctrines do not have any levels decreases or increases. For the fixed wing officer, this guy is going to have increased research levels early on for the Western doctrine and decreased research levels for the later research levels. So that means it's going to be harder to research in the beginning, easier to research in the end as far as days go. The Eastern doctrine for the fixed wing officer is going to all around be more. So that is going to be a debuff technically for the Eastern doctrine as far as this fixed wing officer goes, your jet. And last but not least, we have the naval officer. The naval officer is going to have worse research levels for the Western and Eastern doctrine. So keep that in mind for these officers. These are going to be your buffs and debuffs, and the only things that matter as far as doctrine for these units. So why don't we move right into our first actual officer and its stats. Today we're going to be going over level 1 officers and max level officers. So also something quick to mention that's really important for officers is that you will first notice, if you're a new player, that there are more level icons than I see here. For example, this is a level that you need to be to unlock this level of the officer. So if you are not a sufficient level to get to a certain level, you cannot upgrade past that point. So let's say I am getting the infantry officer and I get to amphibious operations training, which is level 6. I cannot get the max level infantry officer until I get to rank 75. That will be a prerequisite, and you will need to pay attention to that for your officers, because some of these officers will have different level requirements for each level, etc., etc. For example, the Spec Ops Commander is one of the hardest ones to get, I think the hardest, and it's one of the most strict officers in terms of level requirements. So diving right into actual unit stats, here we go. The infantry officer is going to be your basic officer that you will probably see on the battlefield more often than most other officers. This officer is going to be buffing infantry. It will be buffing motorized infantry, mechanized infantry, naval infantry, and a couple other things like towed artillery, because it counts as a soft target or an infantry unit. What we can see here is that it is doing 7 attack damage. It is doing against infantry, 9.3 defense, 5 attack to vehicles, and 6.7 defense, and some defense against aircraft, and not much more else there. It's getting some buffs. It gets no debuffs whatsoever. 25% attack in fields, tundra, and desert, and 25% defense in fields, forests, cities and suburbs, tundra, and deserts. It is going overall pretty fast, has 35 hit points, and it honestly is a very good unit to have, because then we're going to be getting into the unique officer features. First of all, you are going to need an army base level 1 and a recruiting office level 1 for this, so it is not going to be very building heavy. However, it is going to be a little bit expensive, as you can see, more expensive than any regular unit. It's going to cost 2.8 thousand supplies and 3.25 thousand components, and it was going to cost almost 3,000 manpower and a decent amount of cash. Now, about these unique buffs that it gets. This thing is going to have a low radar signature, of course, because it is infantry. It can conquer territory. It can be airlifted at level 1. It can storm position. Now, this is something that not a lot of units get. This means that this unit will ignore entrenchment bonuses during combat, which means defensive bonuses, bonuses received from combat outposts or bunkers, stuff like that. So you're going to ignore, those damage debuffs that you might get when attacking somebody else, because this officer will basically mitigate that. Now, I'm pretty sure this is just for him. I don't think it actually gets this on the other infantry stacked with him. So I think it's just him with that. Now, this is the most important thing you want to notice for infantry, for officers in general. There is going to be an army boost. Now, keep this in mind. Whenever I say this is going to be the most important thing that officers are for. The army boost is going to, so to say, increase the attack damage, defense damage, and speed of units. This is what officers are for, and each officer is going to boost a certain type of unit. This case being infantry. So at level 1, this is going to buff infantry's attack by 15% and defense by 15%. It's going to buff infantry speed by 15% and vehicle speed by 15%. So vehicles even go faster with this. And the last tab here, you're going to have limited mobilization of 1. So don't think you can have more than one of these on the battlefield. Officers will only be able to be built 1 per player. Now, moving on to the max level infantry officer, we're looking at something far greater. Now, keep in mind also something you want to take into consideration. Let's say you want to research the level 4 or second tech level infantry officer. You're going to need a tier 2 or aka second tech level infantry, such as advanced infantry level 4. To research this guy. Same with other levels and other units. So this one is going to be something you're going to want to also take into consideration when using officers. So going to the max level, I don't even have this unlocked yet, but I actually will soon because I'm not that far in terms of levels. This guy is going to be a monster. However, something you will notice right away is that you do not want to lose officers or have to build them again, because building these at low level is the only place you really want to be building them, because they are cheaper and they don't require much. A max level infantry officer is going to require a level 5 army base, a level 5 recruiting office, and it is going to cost nearly 8,000 supplies, 9.3 thousand components, and 10,000 manpower, and a crap ton of cash. This is going to be a huge loss if you lose this officer, so you always want to make sure your officers are protected and that you don't lose them, because they will be very difficult and expensive, costly to build at a later level, such as the max level officer. So, what are we looking at in terms of stats? 12 attack and 16 defense against infantry, 10 attack and 13.3 defense against hard targets, 3 defense against jets, 4 to helicopters. It will have the same buffs as in terrain as it did level 1. It's going to be a bit faster and have 70 hit points. This is going to be something that most officers also get, is that they have a massive amount of hit points because you don't want to lose them and they're very valuable. We are also seeing some different buffs that this guy gets now. He can now become amphibious, which means he can disembark like Marines can, not using ports. He gets a radar detection range of 75, which can detect ground units with a signature of high. This means he can detect vehicles or support units, stuff like that. He gets MBC protection, which protects against radiation, and his army boost becomes significantly better. He gets 50% attack and defense bonus for infantry and 25% speed buffs to infantry and armor in his stack. Now granted, you also want to know that these boosts apply to the officer itself. So not only are you boosting units with the officer, you're also boosting the actual officer. So that's something you're going to want to take into consideration. Now, where would I want to use the infantry officer? The best place I would recommend using him are for motorized infantry stacks, because with 9 motorized infantry, or even 10 if you want to overstack, with the mortars, you are going to be doing insane amounts of damage, because as each max level infantry has a mortar attack of 6.5, you're basically buffing this to around 9.5 per mortar shot. And so it's going to be huge, especially when you have a large amount of infantry, and that mortar attack can become very devastating when you have that buff on there for those infantry, because the mortar attack is great as it is, but boosted, it can become insane and a versatile weapon. Next, we are going to be going over the Airborne officer, and in my opinion, I think this is the one you will probably see least in your games. I will be honest, I've been playing for almost 2 years now, and I have seen this less than 10 times. It's just that rare. So, this officer is going to be boosting airborne infantry and special forces. This is going to be a unit that is specifically for boosting these units, and this will not boost regular infantry, I do not believe. Same for the infantry officer. The infantry officer will not boost airborne or special forces, so keep that in mind. So level 1, the airborne officer, it's going to require a level 2 air base to build and a level 2 recruiting office. It's going to require 3.5 thousand supplies, 2.1 thousand electronics, and some manpower and cash. Now, the most important things to take into consideration for this guy will be the buffs, and we'll discuss that in a second. Damage wise, it is doing 8 attack and 5.3 to infantry, 4 attack to hard targets, and 2.7 defense to vehicles, and some defense to aircraft. And it's going to have only a couple buffs in cities and suburbs, 25% attack bonus. It's going to have a low speed value of 10 or 0.10 and a hit points value of 30. Now, why I say this is what we will be discussing now. So this will have some of the same features that the infantry officer has. This guy, however, cannot conquer territory. He can be airlifted. He has the storm position ability. He can air assault. Now, this is the first unique thing. Within a range of 400, he can air assault just like airborne infantry. And this means he will conduct his first attack via a helicopter assault. Now, this is why his speed is so low, because at level 1, unlike higher levels of this guy, basically he's walking. So he's not going to be very fast. So mainly this guy is going to be in the air attacking, and he will not conquer land. So make sure you don't get him into somewhere where he cannot air ferry back or assault back, because he will be stranded and very vulnerable. His army boost is going to be 10 plus 10% attack and plus 5% defense and plus 20% attack to helicopters, because the first attack, special forces for example, or Airborne, or this guy, the first attack when you air assault is a helicopter attack. Now, something you also want to notice is that this guy is meant for attacking. You don't want to just be sitting around with this guy defending. This guy will be an assault unit, and you will want to use him on the offense, because that is where he's most useful. Now we're going to the max level Spec Ops Commander, or the Airborne Officer. This guy is going to cost a massive amount to rebuild and a large number of buildings. A level 4 airbase, recruiting office level 5, almost 10,000 supplies, around 5,000 electronics, 9,500 manpower, and a lot of cash. He's going to do 16 and 11 defense to soft targets, 10 attack and 6.7 to hard targets, some defense against air targets. And he's going to get a lot more buffs now, unlike the infantry officers, which did not change. He is going to get, unlike the regular urban and suburban buffs of 25%, he's going to now get plus 25% in attack in mountains, plus 50 all around in forest, plus 50 all around in jungles, and plus 25% all around in tundra. This guy is going to also get a lot of unique abilities. He's going to be a stealth unit, which means he is going to be invisible when not in combat. He will be visible when he is in the air assaulting, or on the water, just like special forces. He can airlift at a higher range. He becomes amphibious. He can scout, which means he can see the exact composition of an enemy army. He can reveal stealth of ground units, which means he can reveal special forces, for example. He has NBC protection, which is radiation. He has a higher air assault of 500 range. And the army boost becomes 40% attack and 35% defense, and a 55% attack for helicopter assaults. This guy's hit points also become 60, and his speed value becomes 1.5, because at level 4 he actually gets a vehicle. That just means his speed increases and he no longer has to walk. So keep that in mind. This guy is very situational in my opinion, and rarely do I see him because not many go for Airborne or Spec Ops. He can be very good for Spec Ops, and I think that is where I would use him most. He will just not be seen very much because he is very situational, because a lot of times you'll just want to go for conventional units. You won't want to go for stealth, you won't want to go for the expensive officer, and a lot of times air assaulting can be a pain. So this is why I don't see this guy that much, but in the right hands, this guy is very deadly and something you need to watch out for. The vulnerabilities, of course, are when they are air assaulting, but when they are on the ground and when they are stacked with the proper units, they can be very dangerous. The next officer we're going to be going over is the Tank Commander. This is one of my favorites purely because of his voice line. Did I mention officers get voice lines? They do. They're very, very cool. This guy gets one of my favorites, and you'll see when you get him in the future. This guy is going to have a later research level, of course, than most officers could, because he is armored. He is going to be something that boosts your main battle tanks, your armored fighting vehicles, and your tank destroyers. Basically, this guy actually boosts, I think, all vehicles, because actually it is proven he can boost multiple rocket launchers or any type of artillery besides towed artillery. He can buff mobile anti-air vehicles, SAM launchers, anything like that, even all sorts of armored. So this guy can boost basically the entire armored tab and the entire support tab besides towed artillery. So that is very useful for him because he's actually a very popular officer stacked with multiple rocket launchers, because he can get their damage up very high. I believe if you have this guy stacked with about 9 multiple rocket launchers in mountains, you can do over 100 damage with just the rocket launchers alone, which is insane. So level 1, what are we looking at? He is going to require an army base level 3, a recruiting office level 2, going to require about 5,000 components, and 2.5 thousand electronics, as well as 2.5 thousand manpower and some cash. He's going to do 10 all-round to infantry and 12 all-round to hard targets, and he's going to get some defense against aircraft. He's going to get a 25% all-round buff in open terrain and desert, just like most armor does, and he's going to have a speed value kind of slow at the beginning, as most armor is, but that will change in later levels. And he's going to have an insanely high amount of hit points at level 1 at 70. This guy's a tank. He is a beast. He's literally a tank. He cannot conquer territory. He can storm the position. We've already talked about this buff. Army boost of 15% speed to infantry, so he can boost the speed of infantry. He gets a 25% or 20% attack boost to armor and a 10% defense boost against armor and a 50% speed boost for armor. Now this guy obviously has a better attack boost than defense, because this guy is meant to be on the offensive. This is what you will want to use him for, mainly artillery and armor, so you're going to want to have this guy on the front lines and be using him in the combat. Make sure to keep him protected as well. Moving on to the max level tank commander, the commanding officer. He is going to get massive boosts, but let's go about the downsides first. To rebuild this guy, it's going to be the same as the infantry officer max level. An army base level 5, a recruiting office level 5, and I just can't comprehend how much resources this is to rebuild this guy. 16,500 components, 6,750 electronics, almost 10,000 manpower, and 19,000 cash. This guy is going to be near impossible to rebuild if you don't have a good economy, so you really want to have this guy protected. Overall damage wise, he's getting 15 overall to soft targets, 17 overall to hard targets, a sizable amount of defense to aircraft, and he's going to get an attack buff of 25% in suburbs and urban combat. He's going to have a better speed value and 95 hit points. This hit point box got really big. He's going to get some unique boosts as well. He's going to be able to be airlifted. He's going to be amphibious, which means he can assault with naval and naval vehicles. He's going to storm position, NBC protection, which is obviously for radiation. He can air assault. That's one of the coolest things about that, in my opinion, because the fact that he can air assault means he can get around quickly if there's a situation where you need to resort him around the battlefield quickly if the situation is urgent or dire. The army boost becomes 25% movement speed to infantry, 60% attack buff to vehicles, and a 40% attack defense buff to vehicles, and a 25% movement buff. That attack buff of 60% is absolutely huge. That is insane. This will get 9 multiple rocket launchers above 100 any day, anywhere, anytime. This guy, in my opinion, is best when stacked with artillery because of how versatile he can make artillery, and as well as anti-aircraft. Now, this guy can also be useful when you want to have just a powerhouse of a armor stack pushing through and just taking as many hits as it can take and just spearheading. But in my opinion, I love using this guy. I've used him before a lot. When I'm using him with multiple rocket launchers or mobile artillery, this guy will make those two units a beast, and it is honestly one of the best officers I would recommend in the game, specifically for the reason of how it can buff artillery so well. The fourth officer in the tree of 7, we are almost there, guys. The Rotary Wing officer is going to be your first air-based officer. We are through with land. The Rotary Wing officer is going to be your helicopter officer. He's going to buff any helicopter. Now there are 3 helicopters, ASW attack and helicopter gunship. This guy is going to be a very good officer. Actually, I use him a lot, especially in Eastern doctrines when I prefer to use helicopter gunships, or in the Western doctrine when I like to use Apaches. This guy is going to require an airbase level 1 and a recruitment office level 1 to build at the starting level. It's going to take 3.4k supplies and 2.4k electronics. He's going to do 9 damage to soft targets. He's going to do 11 damage to hard targets. He's going to do 4 attack and defense to rotary wing and 4 to ships. He is going to have an attack range of 500 and a radar range of 50. He's going to have a speed value of 8 and a hit point bar of 35. Now for helicopters, that is a lot. He's going to get some nice buffs. He's going to get this obviously, which means he automatically engages soft targets, hard targets, surface vessels, or helicopters within a radius of 50 if they are hostile. He is a carrier-based aircraft, which means he can land on carriers, which all helicopters can. He has a combat radius of 500, as I said, a radar detection that can detect high signatures of ground, air, and sea. And he has an army boost of 10% speed to jets, which I would not recommend stacking this guy with jets. I don't know why you would do that. And he also buffs the attack of helicopters by 15% and speed by 10%. So that speed buff is also really nice because helicopters are generally slow. Max level. We are getting into some good stuff. Air base level 5 and recruiting office level 3 to rebuild this guy if you lose him at max level. Is going to require 8.2k supplies to rebuild this guy and 6.7 thousand electronics to rebuild this guy, as well as a lot of manpower and cash. So don't lose any officer, like I said, at a high level. He's going to do 14 damage to soft targets, 18 to hard targets, 8 attack and defense against other helicopters. He's going to do 10 to ships and 18 to subs, as he does get an ASW based upgrade, which is really nice if you're stacking him with ASW helicopters, and an attack range of 500 still. He gets a speed value of 10 and a hit point box of 65. This guy is going to be very nice in my opinion, and he does get some nice buffs along the way. He does get sonar because he gets that ASW upgrade, which is really nice. A sonar range of 75. This guy can attack submarines. He has a cruise missile hardpoint, which means he can launch one cruise missile, which is actually very nice because helicopters are generally known for not being able to. He boosts jet speed by 10% still, and helicopter speed by 10%, and the attack buff for helicopters becomes 50%. That is massive, and honestly a very solid buff for helicopters, as they are a very versatile unit in the game overall, because not many have protection against helicopters. So overall, this guy is very good for stacking with helicopters because just of how deadly he can make them. Next, we're going to be going over the Air Ace, or the Fixed Wing Officer, which means the Jet Officer. He's going to boost air superiority fighters or strike fighters. This guy is going to require an airbase level 2 and a recruiting office level 2. This guy is going to require 4.1 thousand components to build and 2.8k electronics. He is going to do 7 damage to hard and soft targets, 10 damage all around to the helicopters and jets, and 4 to ships. He's going to move at 17, which is very, very fast, and have a hit point box of 35. He is going to be obviously a fixed wing aircraft, which means he will automatically engage fixed wing aircraft or helicopters within a radius of 50. He has a combat radius of 800, a standard radar detection which detects high of all 3 areas, and he is going to have an army boost of 15% attack to boost for jets, a speed boost of 10% to jets and helicopters. This guy is also a popular one. I personally like him stacked with strike fighters and naval strike fighters because of how much more damage he can get put on them. I also like them stacked with air superiority fighters because if you're playing that more air superiority based role, you will notice right away he gets their damage above 100 if they're max level and if he is a decent level himself. Moving on to max level, we are going to see that he is going to be another expensive officer to build when he dies if you lose him at this level. He's going to require a level 5 airbase and recruiting office, 10,750 components, 10.7k, 8.7k to electronics, and 6,000 manpower and 30,000 cash. He is going to do 10 all around to soft and hard targets, 20 all around to other fighters, fixed wing aircraft, 18 all around to helicopters, and do 12 to ships. He is going to move at 20, which is insanely fast. He's going to have a hit point box of 60, and he's going to have some very nice buffs as well. He's going to become a stealth unit. That means he can't be seen when not engaged in combat. He is going to have a combat radius of 950 now. He's going to be able to launch 2 cruise missiles, which is very deadly. And he's going to have a massive army boost of 50% attack to jets and 10% speed boost to helicopters and jets. Overall, a very good officer in my opinion. I personally love to use him. Now we're going to be moving into, in my opinion, the best officer in the game. And it is my personal favorite because I will use this in almost every game I get the chance because of how great he really is. It is going to be the Naval officer. This guy is great in every doctrine. I would recommend him. He is great for boosting any ship. This guy is going to buff your destroyers, frigates, cruisers, aircraft carriers, and I believe even corvettes, even though it doesn't say it here. But this guy is the best for a reason that you will see in a second. He is going to require a naval base level 2 and a recruiting office level 1 to build. He's going to require 3.8 thousand supplies and 5.7 thousand components and some manpower and cash. Now, why is this guy so good? Well, as you can see here, unlike other officers, this guy can damage anything. He can hit and damage any unit type in the game. Ground targets, air targets, missiles, ships, subs, anything. That's what I love about him so much, is that he's just such an overall versatile weapon. And he is just so good all around. He's like a good all around unit. Those are the type of units I love when playing this game, especially with officers. So at level 1, he's doing 2 to soft targets, 1 to hard targets. He's going to have some bombardment ability here. He's going to do 4 defense and attack against fixed wing aircraft. He's going to do 3 attack and defense against helicopters, 1.5 against missiles overall, 12 overall the ships, 6 overall the subs, and some infrastructural damage. He's going to have a speed value of 4 on deep water and 2 on coastal water, and have a hitbox value of 55. He's going to get some unique abilities. He's going to have a attack range of 75, which is higher than most level 1 ships. He's going to have an anti-air circle of a range of 100, which can target all 3 air types. He's going to have radar detection that is standard. He's going to have sonar, which is very important. So this guy can get an anti-air circle of 100 and a sonar circle of 100, which means he can detect subs and hit air targets within a range of 100, which is really awesome. This guy can launch 2 cruise missiles at level 1, and his army boost is 10% attack and 50% defense with ships. This guy is just my favorite because he can boost any ship type and just make it so deadly. Personally, what I would stack this guy with is cruisers, because what you will see here in a minute is an amazing max level officer. At max level, he is going to require a naval base level 5 and a recruiting office level 5 to rebuild. Over 10,000 supplies, over 15,000 components, around 9,000 manpower, and some cash. He is going to do 7 damage to soft and armored, which means he's going to be a monster at bombarding. Like, this is insane. This is like the equivalent of a mid-tier level strike fighter. He's going to do 12 all around to jets, 10 all around to helicopters, 5.5 all around to cruise missiles, or missiles in general, 22 overall to ships, 12 overall to subs. He just doesn't have anything he can't hit, and he can hit everything hard. He has a 4.5 speed value on high seas, so he goes the same speed as any ship, the highest speed that any ship can go, and 2.25 on coastal waters, so he is actually a little bit slower on coastal waters than some ships. Keep that in mind. He's going to have a hit point box of 110. That is massive. And an attack range of 100, of course. What does he get that makes him so versatile as well? He gets stealth, which means if you spot 4 cruisers, some chances there might be a high-level officer in that stack that has stealth. You get this around, I think, level 4 or 5 or 6. I think it's 4 or 5. This guy gets the anti-air envelope of 100, radar detection standard, sonar detection standard, cruise missile hardpoints of 4, which means you can launch 4 missiles, and the boost becomes 40% attack buff and 50% defense buff to ships. This guy is my favorite, and personally what I would do with him is I would stack this guy with 4 cruisers, and if you want to overstack, do 5 cruisers, because if your cruisers are max level, overstacking will actually not debuff you technically, but give you a buff still, because not only will the buff make your damage so high that the debuffs will actually be outweighed, but when you lose a cruiser, the debuffs will be gone, so you won't lose that much damage actually, and you'll have still a full stack, so it won't be weak. So overall, that's how I would play with this guy, but he can be stacked with just like any ship. That's just my opinion. He's just so deadly, like to anything. He's almost untouchable sometimes, and you need to protect this guy, because not only is he so valuable, like I have him in this game with my destroyers, just in the early game as well, but he is just an overall all-around great unit to have in any situation, and I would love to have him in any of my games. Moving on to the last officer in the entire officer tech tree and the last naval unit, it is going to be the submarine commander. Now this guy is going to be submarine specific, any submarine, aka only 2 submarines, or the elite submarines I believe. So this guy is going to be your submarine commander, which means he will be buffing your underwater naval vessels. He is going to require a naval base level 3 to build and a recruiting office level 2. He's going to require 3,600 components and 2,700 electronics, as well as some manpower and cash. He is going to be have an attack range of 75, cannot hit anything besides ships or subs. 11 overall to ships, 8 overall to subs. He gets 25% attack buff in deep water, as all subs will have, and a speed value of 3.5 in deep water and 2.19 in shallow water. Remember, keep those subs out of shallow waters, guys. They're good in deep water. And a hit points value of 40. So, what this guy also gets that makes him very unique is he is a stealth unit, of course. He is a submarine. He has radar detection that can detect ships, of course. He has sonar, which means he can detect subs. He can reveal stealth, which means he can also detect subs. He can launch 2 cruise missiles, and he gets an army boost of 10% speed buff to ships and subs, and a 15 attack and defense buff to submarines. This guy is going to be deadly with submarines because a 5 stack of max level submarines in deep water can do, I think, around 95 damage. With a sub officer, you cannot imagine how high that can go. At max level, this guy is going to become god tier. He is going to be expensive like all other officers are going to be to rebuild at this level. A level 5 naval base and recruiting office to rebuild him. 10.2k components, 7,000 electronics, over 5,000 manpower, and a bunch of cash. He's going to have an attack range of 100 by now. He's going to do 18 overall to ships, 15 overall to subs, and he's going to have the same buffs that he had before and a attack range of 100. Now, unique things he will also get another cruise missile added to his hard point, which means another cruise missile he can fire, and the buffs become 30% movement speed to subs and ships, and 50% attack and defense to submarines. So this guy will make submarines deadly in any situation. And if you're going for a stealthy wolf pack setup where you're playing in deep water, you're an island, let's say you're the Philippines, or you're New Zealand, or you're Japan, or you're something like that, where you have deep water around you, it's very nice to have that for you. Like in my France game, I'm using submarines in the Mediterranean, and I can just lock down points and not have to worry about it because my subs hit so hard in deep water if you use the toggle terrain types feature, you will be able to see exactly where you want to have them and where they can be most useful. Like I have a 5-stack here, for example, in my France game, where he can hit anything coming through this route or anything coming from this way, and can stop anything coming from the center, so nothing can get by without getting hit by those subs. And I have subs guarding the Suez as well in my France game. So you just gotta know how to play with them, and they can be very deadly because not many people are also gonna have ASW all the time. A lot of people might go for cruisers, but cruisers are very weak against submarines. So overall, this officer is also one of my favorites, but overall, in conclusion, my favorites, most importantly, obviously, is number 1, the naval officer. I love to use the rotary wing officer as well. The tank officer, the tank commander, and the infantry officer. Those are my absolute favorites. The fixed wing officer is also very good, as well as the submarine commander. And the airborne officer I use sometimes, but not all the time. Like I said, you'll rarely see this, it's very situational. But overall, the ones I love to use are those 4. And overall, there's really no bad officer. You just have to know when to use them, when they're good to use, and you need to make sure that you have them survive and stacked with the right units. So guys, I hope this helped you. I hope this helped at least somebody. That's the goal overall, as I said, and all the other videos before. All I want to do is help people understand the game and the units. And this series is going to conclude with one of the longest videos probably that I've had on this channel. It took a lot of explaining, but it's all worth it to know that you guys are always there watching and supporting my channel, and I try to give as much back as I can with these videos. So if you liked it, you can leave a like, subscribe if you like the channel and want to see more, or if you find yourself coming back. You can dislike if you didn't like it. You can comment if you have any questions. If you like something about it, you can just say hi. If you didn't like something, you can say why. Or if you even just have a question, or even just want to say something random, you can feel free to do that, or if I missed something. So guys, I hope you have a beautiful day, and I will see you all in the next video, whatever that may be. Later guys, have a great day.